Hello there. Welcome back. Episode 8. First Integrity, A Course in Living Your Truth. And we're on lesson number 5, button pushing. So in the last lesson, in the last episode, we talked about releasing our judgments of others. We talked about how when someone says something that is hurtful towards you and you react, you're in fact only reacting to something that is actually within you. The same work can be applied to situations and experiences in our everyday world. Have you ever heard the expression, that really pushes my buttons? I use this statement a lot. It means that something has happened that really annoys you or disturbs your peace. It could be something like the actions of another person. That's the work from the previous lesson. Or it could be a situation that you find frustrating. A flat tire, a long lineup, spilling coffee down your shirt, etc. When something pushes your buttons, it is again an opportunity to see something that lies within you. In other words, it isn't the situation that is disturbing your peace, but a story in your mind associated with the situation that is really your problem. You are judging the situation, assuming that it needs to be different than it is, and we all know where judgment leads us. They drag us back into that victim mentality, where everything is happening to you and the situation lies out of your control. I want to talk briefly about the word control. The truth is, we don't control anything. We like to think that we do. We like to plan and organize our lives, but the truth is that control is really an illusion. We can't control circumstances, but what we can control is our reaction to them. We get to choose whether to be accountable to ourselves or to be a victim. When we choose to be accountable to ourselves and own up to our reactions, it can help you to release that which is no longer serving you and exist in a state of peace. So I'm just going to pause for a minute and say, I really feel that this is what COVID is serving up to the world. To learn about. I really believe that. From a collective consciousness shifting tool, how about something that wipes clean everybody's calendar and creates more uncertainty than anyone has ever experienced before in their lives? Okay, I digress. Let's look at an example. My number one button pusher is my son, Kefren. He seems to have a gift for lining up experience after experience that simply drive me crazy. It's still true 8 years later. Before I became a mother, I would have said that I was a control freak. People around me confirmed this image of myself by using words like A-type personality and perfectionist. When I became pregnant, I had a plan. I was going to have a perfect pregnancy and a natural childbirth. I was going to breastfeed, and everything about my journey into motherhood was going to be just perfect. The thing is, looking back on it, my experience was perfect, although it ended up being totally different than what I had planned. Quite literally, every expectation that I had going into motherhood was unmet. You know from reading my story that initially this in the book here, the memoir, initially this perceived loss of control sent me into a depression. This too was perfect. It was a strong message from my soul that something was very wrong with my belief system. In order to regain my sense of peace and well-being, I had to learn to let go of my expectations and instead live very much in the present moment. Recently, I was visiting with friends, people that I haven't known for that long, whom I met through my yoga practice. During this conversation, a few of them shared with me that they perceived me to be an easygoing and lighthearted individual. Easygoing? Lighthearted? Me? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. When I got home later that night, I sat in reflection and I saw the truth of their statements. When I looked down deep within myself, I saw that I had changed. Letting go of the old story that told me I needed to be in control had allowed something new to come into my being. Or to look at it another way, you might say that I was more in touch with my true essence than I had been previously. It is important to clarify something here. My perfectionist quality isn't bad. It simply isn't serving me in the same way anymore. There are wonderful advantages to this facet of my personality. Great organizational skills, efficient time management, punctuality, and producing results. I would say that I still have access to these valuable skills. The difference now is that these skills no longer define me. So a couple of episodes ago, I was telling you about the 4 characters in the brain, Jill Bolte Taylor's work, and my front left brain being my dominant character, the perfectionist. I am super grateful. She's got some chops, man. She has got some skills, and it allows me to do and have access to a lot of cool things because she's so damn organized and she's so strict and regimented and on top of things. But what I'm still learning, honestly, I'll just tell you, I am softening. I am learning to continue. I think it's a soul lesson. So I think the course of my life will be about this. I don't necessarily know that I'll ever land there. But I think the course of my life has been to learn to let go of this perceived sense of control and be okay with what is and what's unfolding and things not going the way you think they're supposed to go. A couple stories come to mind. Shortly after this book was published, I went to Peru for the first time, and part of that journey was engaging in ayahuasca ceremony. And for those of you that don't know what ayahuasca is, it is a plant medicine that you take in ceremony with intention, and it has psychoactive properties that work differently on various people. And for me, how it worked was pretty fascinating. I'm still, trying to make sense of it all these years later, consciousness and how it works. But the most profound lesson from that first experience and first set of experiences, I guess, with ayahuasca was she is often how we refer to the medicine, the plant medicine. She ripped away from me any illusion of control, ripped it out of my hands. And I fought and fought and fought with her to maintain that set of illusions, but she ripped them away. And what I mean by that is I was under the illusion that I had overemphasized my own importance around my own life path and my child's life path. And like, our children are not our children. Kefren has his own soul and his own path and his own life to live. And it's kind of, in some ways, it's none of my business, right? It's his authentic journey. It's up to me to keep him alive, but death is none of my business also. Like, my own death is none of my business, and nobody, I don't get to know these things. And I had overemphasized my own role in these things. And the result of that was me gripping onto life and hanging on for dear life. And a lot of suffering, a lot of needless suffering came from that. And that ayahuasca ceremony totally changed my life, because she ripped all of that illusion of control away from me. And what was left on the other side of that was the deepest sense of peace I've ever known in my entire being. And I still have, it was such a profound experience. I still have access to that. I forget sometimes and I overgrasp, but I can remember to let go and settle back into the knowing, the peaceful knowing of I'm only in control of this amount of things. So I talked in this book a little bit about like healing becoming a mother wound, that I wasn't complete at this stage of the game. I was well on my way. But I've since, I would say, really come to a place of like deep reconciliation with how I became a mom and how that all went down. And I've forgiven myself for, I don't even know what I needed to forgive myself for. When I look back on that, it's even a funny expression. I had nothing to forgive myself for. And at one point I really must have believed I did. I had everything going into that pregnancy. I couldn't have shown up more for it. I didn't do anything wrong. And it didn't go the way I thought it should go. That's all that happened. Nothing else happened. And yet when it didn't go the way I thought it should go, I was left with such a sense of despair and grief and guilt. And man, like, what? That's all needless. That's all crazy town. That is all, choosing suffering when you don't need to choose that. Okay, let's go back. So each time my son or any other person or situation manages to push my buttons and disturb my peace, I immediately try to determine the story that is associated with my reaction. What is the voice in my head telling me about what is happening here? I've talked about some of the stories earlier in the book. My inability to breastfeed had the story, I'm not a good mother, tied to it. Similarly, my need for a C-section had the story, I'm not a real woman, tied to it. Both of these stories were very harsh I am statements that I needed to heal. Kefren's existence, exactly as he was and is, provided me with the opportunity that I needed to bring these belief systems, these stories, into my conscious awareness. Button-pushing situations don't have to be as dramatic as this. Another one of the situations that Kefren has created for me and continues to create is his ability to throw a tantrum. So this is when he was a little person. He was magnificent at throwing tantrums. Magnificent. Now, cognitively, I know that most children throw tantrums. I know this, and yet each time he throws a tantrum, especially if there is someone else there to witness it, I react. First, I am flooded with emotions, frustration, anger even, and then shame. All wonderful triggers and messages from my soul. What story are they associated with? Again, the same old story about I am not a good mother. Each time I feel these emotions, it presents me with yet another opportunity to let go of this story and bring that part of me back to a state of wholeness. My son has been one of my greatest teachers, still is. He continues to push my buttons every day, leaving a mess almost everywhere he goes. Still does that. Climbing higher than I would like. Still doing that. Having tantrums in the most public of places. He doesn't do that anymore, thankfully. I can't control him. Shocker. And now that I think about it, I wouldn't want to. My job is to guide him and teach him, to treat him with the utmost respect. When he chooses to engage in acts that push my buttons, I can immediately choose to receive the gift and forgive both myself and him, returning us both to a state of grace. Questions for reflection. What types of situations really push your buttons? Can you identify the story in your head that is associated with them? Is there someone in your life who really pushes your buttons? Can you see them as bringing forth the wonderful opportunity for healing? Are you willing to forgive them? Are you willing to return both of you to a state of grace? So I think I already shared some thoughts and stories along the way through that, but I think this is probably still one of my most important daily practices in the container of my day-to-day life and family. My accountability partner, that is my life partner and fiance, I've trained up in this course and in this work, and I don't get away with anything, which is my preference. I want it like that, and he doesn't either. I'll tell you another funny story about moving from perfectionist control freak into lighthearted, easygoing early on in our relationship, post ayahuasca. So after the control had been ripped away from me, and I was trying to figure out who I was on the other side of that. Perry and I had just started dating, and we were driving out to my parents' place, which is like a 3-hour drive through the mountains where there's no cell service. And we pulled over to stop and use the restroom and change our stretch our legs and whatnot. And he thought it would be funny. He's a prankster. He likes practical jokes. He thought it would be funny to pretend to lock the keys in the truck. And he didn't do that, but he wanted to see what I would do. And I was like super chill. I was like, oh, okay, like we have no cell service. So I just went straight into like, I wonder what we should do about that. Maybe we should go back to the road and like flag down somebody, or like, and he right away was so shocked at how chilled out I was about it. I just was like, okay, cool. What's next? And that was another good reflection or mirror, because he was blown away. He was like, wow, like you didn't react to that at all, and I thought you'd have this big reaction. And so I aspire to be more easygoing and roll with the punches and try not to let things disturb my peace too much. And I'm not claiming arrival, not claiming enlightenment. Please don't misunderstand, but that's definitely for me a high priority and a skill that I really value, and one that I continue to cultivate. So button pushing, triggers, like if you take one lesson away from this course, like let it be that one, because those things are so needlessly disturbing our peace day to day to day to day. Have a good one. I'll see you next time.